All right. Well, thank you all for being here. I hope you guys enjoyed the opening remarks from Jane. And now we get to be with Jane and Monalisa and Andre for another conversation about adolescent SRHR curriculum. So I'm Emily Kaiser. I am the Associate Director of the Aspen New Voices Fellowship. And I have the tremendous privilege and joy of working with Jane, Monalisa, Andre, and dozens of other New Voices fellows throughout the year. I've also had the privilege over the last few months of working with all three of them to develop something really special that they're going to tell you about today. Before we get to that, though, I wanted to just ground our conversation in a little bit of the why behind this curriculum. And I'm going to ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves and to tell us about a myth or a misconception around adolescent reproductive health and sexuality. And I'm going to start with Andre. Andre, I wonder if you could unmute, introduce yourself, and tell us about a myth or a misconception that you hear about adolescent sexuality and reproductive health. Andre?
Thank you so much, everyone, and thanks so much, Mary, for your welcome. I'm Andrea Ambrose. I'm from Rwanda. I'm zooming in from north part of Rwanda. I'm a senior new voice fellowship, and I work for the University of Global. And so my background is a midwife and a nurse. So what I can say in one sentence about the myth, especially in our context of Africa, we like say a teenager, an adolescent doesn't have any rights, any access to the health service information, or everything need to come from the church leader, the parents, or the high level of decision making around her or him. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Andre. That's fascinating. We'll have a few more folks joining us as the plenary session wraps up. Welcome, welcome. We are talking about adolescent SRHR curriculum, and I want to turn to Monalisa next. Monalisa, I wonder, could you introduce yourself and tell us about a myth or a misconception that you hear about?
Hi everyone, this is Monalisa. I'm from India and I work with an organization called Barefoot International. I lead the wellness initiatives and the education initiative, and our work is primarily centered around enabling community leaders so that they can drive health changes in their own communities. That includes speaking about sexual and reproductive health rights for girls and women. So I will, one myth which I was told when I was growing up was around a lot around menstrual taboos and myths. And one, can I say two of it?
Of course.
So one was that when you are menstruating, you shouldn't talk to boys. So there was this clear guidance given to me that when you're menstruating, try not to talk to the boys without giving me any explanation. And the second one was, when you are taking a soil pad to dispose it somewhere, make sure that the boys don't see it. If the boys see it, you will have some disease, or somebody, even my friend told that you have to marry that boy. So I used to get so scared while taking the soil pad that you have to really hide under so many that the boys don't see. So these were the two myths I had when I was growing up.
That's great. Monalisa, thank you for sharing those. Jane, I'd love for you to introduce yourself. I know that some of the folks here have already heard from you this morning, so thank you for that. But Jane, tell us a little bit more about you and some misconceptions or myths that you've heard.
Yeah, my name is Jane Otai, and I work for the Empowered Girls Initiative, where we support adolescent mothers to actually go back to school. So some of the myths that I've had, and actually I was in the field last week, so I'll talk about last week, the myths that I had in the community. And the myth was that when the adolescent girl when she starts having breasts, it's good for her to allow men to touch her breasts so that they can grow. Otherwise she will not have full breasts. So she should allow men to touch because that is good for her breasts to grow. How can that be? But anyway, that was it.
Great. Well, thank you each for sharing those. The reason we wanted to kind of start the conversation this way is that I think it explains a little bit about why we were working on this curriculum. And we're going to have an opportunity to share that with you, the entire curriculum, in a little bit. But I want to start by asking Monalisa a little bit more, if you could give a little bit more of an explanation about why this curriculum. There's so much information out there about reproductive and sexual health. What gap does this particular curriculum fill in your mind?
Thanks, Emily. I think I remember the first discussion we had about this curriculum when I think Adna Mama told us that, there is a need of this curriculum. And I have always felt that, there are so much of information out there with, we are on two sides. At one place, there are so many communities where adolescents don't have access to any information, to places where there are access to information, but there are not verified sources of information. So youth adolescents are now exposed to, they are on mobile phones, they can access a lot of information, which is good in a way, but there is no verified information. So, there are already curriculum out there, but I feel that in many communities, is there a curriculum where a community leader can use it? Because there are so many academic kind of curriculum. There's so much of curriculum. I remember seeing a training manual with pages and pages of explanation. And I see if I take this to my community leader, the first thing is she will be so overwhelmed just because she has to read so much in terms of, getting that information. So I was very clear in my mind, but we constantly had this conversation. Why this curriculum? And I remember Jane telling me that a grandmother, we should make a curriculum which a grandmother, and it got validated for me because I was at home when I was working on this curriculum, and I got some picture. And her mother was right beside me, and she was asking me, "What are you doing?" And I explained her the whole thing. And what she told me, that I wish I had this book, so that so much of myths you talk about, which had come from me, I wouldn't have given you that wrong information if I had access to such a simple, such a pictorial curriculum. And I was like, yes, there is so much of gap in way the curriculum are designed. We need to talk about our parents, where they would be able to use a, read something and give this information. We need to have community leaders feel comfortable using a curriculum that is not so much, it's not heavy, not so much wordy, because we have community leaders who have basic literacy. So we need to think about transcending the barrier of literacy and numeracy when we are designing something. So as and when, there are so many uh, communities which are not able to access this information because the resources are not for them. It is designed for someone who had certain kind of literacy or who can understand certain things. And and after that, I think I was mentioning to Emily when I was giving it to the illustrator, and I'm sure Manisha here, who is the illustrator who is listening to this, she told me that, oh my god, I need this curriculum. So so there is so much of dearth of information, and information in a way which which feels relatable. So this is where, so it's relatable, it's simple, it's easy to use, and it's culturally relevant. So these are the four ways I think this curriculum will be very relevant for our communities where we serve.
Great. Thank you, Monalisa. I just have one little follow-up question for you, and that is I wonder if you could just describe very, very briefly what this curriculum is, what it looks like, and what it is. Can you describe some of the elements that you included?
Sure. So this is what we're calling as an adolescent sexual and reproductive health rights curriculum, where we have taken a rights approach to sexual and reproductive health for adolescents. We decided, because this is what we are calling at, the first humble attempt, and I'm sure we will have multiple versions covering different topics. So in this topic, we have picked changes during adolescence. So what are the changes? What are the physical and emotional changes? And why it happens in simple terms, in explain in a way people do not think that it is them who are going through this. They feel that they're if they're going through emotional changes, it is normal, you all go through this. Then the second one we have picked about on menstruation, because we have seen that a lot of discrimination starts happening with girls at the onset of menstruation. So we have picked around, why menstruation, what happens, what is premenstrual syndrome, how, with simple measures, how you can go to a doctor for premenstrual syndrome. We then have picked about personal hygiene, which is a simple and easy topic. And then fourth, we have talked about the sexual and reproductive health with a very rights approach of, right to say no. It's okay to say no. If you're a girl, in a lot of our communities, we have been told that you cannot say no. We have talked about safe sex. We have talked about unsafe sex, steps to take. So these are the main parts of our curriculum. There are so many other topics we wanted to include, but as I was mentioning, I think this is the first version. We will go into different topics as and when we develop.
Yeah, more to come, hopefully, if we can continue to work on this. Thank you, Monalisa. I want to turn to Andre now. And Andre, I'm wondering if you could share with us a little bit about what your education was like as a child and what you think will be different when we have these tools to educate young people about their bodies and their sexuality. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Thanks so much, Mary. And from my generation and my age, I remember, first I need to share with you a little bit a true story of mine. When I was like 14, 15, I remember, I was given a card from a girl who used to live around our home. It was so beautiful, and I came with it at home. And my head brother saw it, and he was much more based on the church. He was a Jehovah's Witness. Was not happy to see me having a card from a girl, and he destroyed it and dropped in what's the corrector. So I was really very frustrated and very angry, and from that time we didn't have any chance to talk about what is sexual and reproductive health, and we could not even have any way in a group, in a family, in the schools, I said to open a conversation and talk any reason what is going on from the changes from like what's happening to me. For example, the first time maybe I get having kind of maturity, saying my body changing, I didn't know what was happening to me. And sometimes could you say tonight that something happened, like the first ejaculation, you see, you don't know to ask someone what's going on. The same to my sisters, they could have the first menses, and maybe from the primary school, everyone was laughing and they were much more ashamed. So that time, being honestly, there's no way to get any information. But as we glowed, I remember time I started my practicum from the nursing school. I left my home and I lived in another place. So at the time where I was like free to talk with the girls, and I started like kind of relationships with the girls, and I was a little bit free. So, but it wasn't again a very stem because I didn't know anything. I could have got any kind of disease, like commit and sex because I didn't know what going was like this safe, this unsafe. And whatever I did, I could not go like out and buy any protection or say no or a yes because I was not empowered or aware of anything that can happen to me. So if you can compare our generation to this kind of generation today, where they are exposed to these social media platforms, although in a family, in a community, there is lack of information, but there is again a kind of a lot of information which may be again a risk because they don't know what is the correct, what is the wrong, what's a myth, what is fact. So they can get a lot from YouTube, they can get a lot things from Facebook, they can get a lot from their peers. So they are more challenged than even aware. So the reason why having this kind of evidence-based tool by the people in a field that will change, will like connect the real fact with the real stage of adolescents and teenagers.
Mm. Yeah, no, that's interesting, Andre. Thank you for sharing that. And I think that's some of the irony here with this work is that we have a glut of information. We almost have too much information out there. and yet it's not prepared and directed in a way that can be easily understood by the audiences that you're trying to reach. And that's what's so fascinating about the work that you're doing. So I wanted to bring Jane in here to talk a little bit more about the way you were thinking about this work and approaching it. And you were really intentional about taking a rights-based approach to sexual and reproductive health. And I wonder if you could say a little bit more about that. Why is that important, and what does that actually mean when we're talking about adolescent sexual and reproductive health and rights?
Yeah, when we were writing this curriculum, I really took a very strong stand on rights, adolescent sexual reproductive health rights. And the reason that I did this is because in my work, in my experience working with adolescents, they don't feel like they deserve information. They don't feel like they should access services. They feel like they're second-class citizen. You know, and they are given all kinds of information and myths, and they do not really have a right to correct information and accurate information. Most of the times they are condemned when they want to access information, and they really feel intimidated when they want to get information, or even when they get the services. Why should they feel intimidated? We have the laws, we have the international conventions which support them. We have policies that support them to be able to access information and services, but they are even not aware that this information is for them and the services they can demand for these services. And because of that, then when they get into the health facility, the health provider can deny them the services. When they get to school for information, the teacher can decide it's not yet time for you to get this information. When they are raped and there's gender-based violence and they go to the police condemns them for the way they had been dressed or the hour they were walking, and so they deserved to be raped. How can we allow such a society to continue? We must be able to empower them with tools that tell them, look, you have the right to this information, you have a right to services. But apart from that, as they are growing up, and they're growing up, they're blooming, they're getting hips, they're getting breasts. I mean, they are insulted just walking in the street. Look at this one, she's becoming old. They have a right to say, you do not have to insult me. I have to really feel comfortable in my body, and nobody should shame me because I'm going through menstruation, because I'm breaking my voice. These are natural factors. These are hormones that are, developing in me, and I have a right to grow. But all these things they have never known, and it is never disseminated in the community or even in the adolescents, and adolescents continue to suffer. And so when we are writing this curriculum, I had the opportunity to say, let's give them the opportunity to know their rights, know that they have a right to say no to early sex. They have a right to say no to forced marriages. They have a right to say no when they're touched. They have a right to say no. They have to get their results from the teacher who is demanding for sex before they give them grades. Why should that be? But it's because they do not know their rights and everybody else is taking advantage of them. And therefore, that's why I really thought that we have to have a rights approach so that they can be able to thrive and not be shamed because of who they are or because of their age. Yeah.
Thank you, Jane, and welcome. I see we have some more members of the audience joining us. Thank you for being here. We're talking today with Jane and with Andrea and Monalisa about an adolescent SRHR curriculum that they have designed and built for anyone to use. It's really designed to be accessible regardless of literacy levels, regardless of internet access. So it can be used in a number of different environments. I saw Monalisa and Andre nodding as Jane was speaking. I want to pause there and see if you wanted to build on anything that Jane had said there. I could see that was resonating with you. Monalisa or Andre, did you want to add something there?
Yeah, I think this whole thing about the right to say no or right to seek services is so important This reminds me of a girl who, a part of a discussion we were having around menstrual health. And, after everyone left, she just stood back. And once we were discussing about, unsafe practices, abortion, and because she was a victim of early marriage, and she had gone to, so there is a custom in India that you get married early, but you only go to the husband's place during festival. And that time she got pregnant, and she wanted to continue her studies, and she knew that if she had asked for the services, she will be named and shamed in the community. So what she did was that she somehow procured some of the drugs, and she took it, and she bled for like 5 days, with no supervision, no care at all. So the whole thing about that, she had the right to seek these services, and nobody can deny her that services. It's so important, because God forbid anything had happened to her. And I think this is not just one story. There were so many stories like that, where particularly the girls don't even know that they could get this, information. And so much important to build this kind of, community leaders who can provide this information. Sometimes when we are working in the community, if we go back to the community, people come and, ask us, I'm going through this problem, and can you, what should I do? It shouldn't be me telling. I mean, this is not the approach. It should be the community leader. Somebody shouldn't have to wait for 6 months for someone to come where they feel safe. We need to have safe spaces within the communities. And the hope is that through this curriculum, where, when this is disseminated through community leader, these spaces are created where somebody can ask and seek services without being, judged for anything. So yeah, this when Jane was mentioning, I was immediately reminded of that girl where she was not sure that she could seek this service.
Thank you, Monalisa. Andre, did you want to add?
Yeah, what I need to add, with this curriculum, we are not like promote or advance any medical protocol or guideline. No, it's just a kind of opening space for open conversation or free conversation, non-judgmental conversation, where teenager, adolescents, students, parents, teachers, or healthcare provider can be together and discuss openly about the facts and the myth. And again, we are just, because you said like breaking the silence, but using what? What guidance we have with that kind of tool. Because if you need to talk, you need to have kind of maybe kind of facilitation tool. So this is what we are just doing. The curriculum is designed to lead the conversation, to lead the discussion, and at the end to empower the teenage and adolescents themselves to understand first of all, their health, from their how to go and change, and then their rights, and why they need to make this decision, or why not they can't do this, and what the consequences, what the positive benefits or negative and advantages from this, what are the risks, what the benefits, and themselves they are like drivers of their own futures. Because for us, from our classic way of surviving in this kind of adolescent teenagers, we're like best connected with the churches leaders. Whatever they said, it was yes. Part of what they said was yes. But at the end, when we left to survive ourselves, we could not like control, even know what to do. So for the generation we are creating or are building to have this curriculum, wherever they will be, away from the parents, away from the church leaders, away from the teachers, they will be able to use this package to know, I know what I can do and why I can do it. And there is this because I don't understand what I can get as outcome. So this is what curriculum we are developing. And again, this curriculum is it's not like a facilitator will not be having a lot of to talk, like I'm talking too much. No, that the student will be the one expressing their interests, their feelings, and their gaps, and what they want to change, and how themselves they can be the pioneer for this change. Thank you.
Thank you, Andre. And I think that leads to the next part of our conversation, which is really on how we want to use this curriculum. And importantly, when the three of you were thinking through what you wanted to build here, one of the earliest decisions that you made was that this would be free and accessible to anybody who wanted to use it, and that it would really be designed not for doctors and to be used by people who don't have that medical knowledge, as Andre said, so that it's easy to understand. It's not containing a lot of jargon, and that there's not a lot of reading that's involved. So I'm curious, I'd love to hear from each of you. Maybe we'll start with Jane, about how you envision this being used. How would you like to see this used in the communities where you live and work?
Yeah, I think in response to that, one thing that came to mind is that currently there is a push for comprehensive sexuality education. And the assumption is that in schools, teachers should be able to pass on this information to a captive audience who are the students. But for a long time, comprehensive sexuality education has not taken off. Teachers are very busy with the subjects where they are going to be examined. English, math, science, that is very important for a teacher. And they don't find time to teach sexuality or reproductive health to the adolescents. And so the way that I'm looking at it is it's a very easy curriculum which the teachers can actually pull a subject at a time and pass it on 10 minutes before we do English. 10 minutes before we do our maths, let's talk about your body changes. Okay? So it will be very easy for them to actually not really go so deep into the science of it and the acronyms and this so much. It is very basic, and any teacher can be able to handle it and use it and teach and facilitate a discussion with the students. Religious leaders, for a long time, when each time there was comprehensive sexuality education, it put them off. Okay? They felt like they're teaching sex. But now when we are talking about the rights, then even the way that we have been able to put this curriculum together, even a religious leader can handle it without fearing there's too much science in this and I cannot handle it. Just the word comprehensive made people wonder what is so comprehensive. So they would really find it difficult to work with the tools that they had. A community health worker can look at this and be able to pick a subject and teach about menstruation and how to use a pad and how to dispose of a pad. But as we continue, even the students themselves can be facilitators. We have health clubs in schools. Any student can be able to use this book and pass on the same information. They can be able to have a discussion group using this curriculum, so that we do not limit who can use it. Religious leaders can use it, teachers can use it, health providers can use it, students themselves can, youth leaders can use it, so that we disseminate this with as many people as possible, and we have a critical mass of people who actually have the right information in their hands and can use it for their own good. Yeah.
Jane, beautifully said. Thank you for sharing that. I want to bring in Monalisa and Andre, but before I do that, I see we have Dr. Tijani Salami in the audience. So Dr. Salami, I would love for you to add some questions in there as well, if you have some thoughts on this and want to add, because I know that this is an issue that you've written about in your own advocacy as well. So we encourage you to put your questions either in the chat or in the Q&A bar. I'll be watching both of those. We'd love to bring you all into the conversation. But let me go to Monalisa now. And Monalisa, I'm wondering, from your perspective, how do you want to see this curriculum used, and what changes if it's used successfully?
I think Jane has covered it, because in our communities, we look at religious leaders, because religious leaders, community leaders, the elders in the family, the teachers, they become the ones who give this information. And for reasons that being, sexual and reproductive health, menstruation health is such a taboo subject. And also it's difficult to disseminate this information. So I'm envisioning in communities that these leaders have these pictures which are, very culturally, we have tested, it's culturally appropriate, it's easy to use. Simply use these picture cards to disseminate information. It's in language. So the idea is to have it in local languages. currently the version is in English, but then the idea and hope is that we do it as many as local language possible. So once it is translated by community-based organization, then it's very easy for them to use this and disseminate this information in the communities. I think if I dream big, I can imagine a grandmother using it for her daughter or the grandson, because we have leaders in our communities, those are grandmothers, and they take up so much of, they give so much of information and so much of decision making. So a lot of times grandmothers to get this information, the mothers to get this information for themselves and then pass it on. I am really envisioning an intergenerational passing of information through this. That we have communities where the mother, grandmother, and the boy or girl come together. So this is where the way we think this will be very crucial when we have such picture cards. Easy, it's more like going through a comic book. It's more pictures. You like to go through what's in the next picture. It's not a lot of it's not like reading your normal. We don't like reading a lot of theory, so it's more pictures. So you love to want to see what's in the next page, and you get a lot of information. And I see that this will be the book. We have tried to make it in a way that if it's given to an adolescent themselves, they would be able to get so much information out of it themselves. Even if there are no facilitator around, a lot of information they can get it themselves. So our hope is that everyone it's in a way that it caters to a lot of stakeholders, from the decision makers in the community to adolescent themselves.
Great. Andre, I'd love to hear from you. Tell me how you see this being used.
Yeah, there is not much about wording. It's just much more about visualization. There's images and well designed. And if you can look at, maybe they will be having a chance to see it. Just, the image itself illustrates what a teenager and others can understand. Even some can, because in Africa, the men, they are not a big part of population. They don't have to read. So they can look at the image, they can discuss on the image. So, and another one is that there's not much about the sciences. No, it's always this kind of for the existing information in a very simple way. And because with the reality on the bodies, what you can see in our bodies, it's the same as what can you see on as image on the curriculum. Another things, it is there is a kind of part of facilitator, so you can just print it and use it anywhere you can go. Another things, we can the facilitator, they want to be like the high level of academic whatever. No, even those adolescents, those maybe teenager themselves can be champion of this curriculum. They can discuss on it in a group, subgroup, the pairs. Because most of the time, they trust each other in the pairs. They can, where did you get information? So they can discuss. So it is a very simple, a very well summarized, a very straighted, a very friendly to use by everyone. So myself, I'm very clear to see it maybe being implemented. And there is not much about those PowerPoints. No, it's really where some can put here and the people can discuss on it. It's based on the nature of facts, not from the artificial intelligence. It's very simple, very natural.
Thank you, Andre. Thank you for that. And I'm seeing such great comments coming up in the chat. I love that idea of a book called Where There Is No Doctor. I think that really does kind of reflect some of the things that we were talking about here. And Meti, absolutely, the ability to translate into first languages is really important to us. I think I can share a screen, and as I try to figure out the technology here, forgive my ignorance, I wonder, maybe I'll ask Monalisa and then Jane and Andre to maybe talk us through a little bit about what we're seeing here. Can you all see that? Hopefully you can.
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
Excellent. So I think I have successfully done that. So this is really what the curriculum looks like. And maybe I'll start with Monalisa, because I know that your team was really instrumental in some of the design of this. Do you want to talk a little bit about what we're looking at here?
Sure, Emily. I think, yeah. So this is, this is in a printable form, so it will be in PDF form. We initially thought about it being a video, but we thought that not many people would have. So would have access to smartphones to look at videos. So that's why it's in a PDF form. It could be directly printed out. And what we have done is that a lot of pictures has been used throughout to describe what is written. So even if you don't read through pictures, you get a lot of information. In the first page, we have very specifically mentioned who this book is for. So what is the purpose and who should use this book. So the first part cover all that in simple terms. Then there is an introduction to give just a summary. This is, I think, the only page where you see a lot of words. Trust me, there are more pictures down below. And then, this is the purpose of the curriculum, where we are mentioning that, this will help teachers, community leaders, health service providers. And we are envisioning this as a healthcare leader who is giving this information. We have given a short summary of how to read this curriculum, what each part mentions, so that that, if it's called summary, this is, giving a very basic information to a community leader before they start. Some basic facilitation tips which will help them, which is like, these are sensitive topics. Don't force someone to speak about it because it takes time. And then there is our 4 major modules. So this is the first module, which is the changes in adolescence. It's the group of, so we are envisioning that in a community like this, a community leader will be giving this information. Then, when it starts, it's a summary. So it's a very shortened version of what is there in the entire module. Then there is objective and key learning, and the total time for the module is there. And then we go topic by topic. So when you go by topic, there are a lot of pictures. In a way, I think what we tried to do, that we make the characters that it resonates with India, it resonates with countries in Africa, in Latin America. So we can see the characters being resonating. And then now this is, different kind of different changes in the bodies. Then the first, it will go through the entire physical changes. The next part is my favorite part, where we are speaking about why everyone is unique. So when we go through these changes, right, we kind of compare each other. That's why I am not going through these changes. So below that, we speak about, why everyone is unique. People go through different kind of changes at different point of time. And we give bit of an explanation of why these changes are important. And then we go through the emotional changes, because we speak a lot about the physical changes, but not the emotional changes. And we have put about the emotional changes and the social changes. So that's the first module.
Great. Well, let me stop sharing there, because I know sometimes it's hard to read all of this, and we will be sharing this full module with all of you after the event, and we do encourage you to use it in your communities. It will also be on Monalisa's organization's website, which is Barefoot College, and also on the Aspen New Voices website. And it is Creative Commons, if anybody's familiar with that, which means that you're welcome to use it as you see fit, and you can change it. If there are pieces that you want to use and pieces you don't want to use, you're welcome to pick and choose from that. But I wonder, now that we've been able to share with the audience a little bit of what it looks like, Jane, was there anything that you wanted to add to Monalisa's description there?
I think the thing is that we've tried to make it as user-friendly as possible. And where there is no electricity, where there is no computer, where they cannot share a video, you can still use this book, because we took that into consideration, so that somebody doesn't say they cannot use the book because they do not have, technology out there. So as much as possible, everybody can use it wherever they are, whether it's in rural areas, in urban areas, everybody can be able to use this curriculum.
Yeah. Andre, anything that you wanted to add there?
It seems like I didn't work on this. Like, it's new to me, very beautiful. It's where it's exciting, and you can see it. Everyone can, have attraction to use it. And as you go, it's a little bit. There's more chapters, more modules that was not, short. But I encourage everyone to look at it and use it. I myself, even I'm excited to start using it in my community. Yeah.
Well, that's great. It's great. I'm excited to hear that. Well, we just have a few more minutes here. So I encourage our audience members, if you have questions for our panelists here, we'd love to hear them. But I'd love to kind of take the conversation to what's next, sort of if each of our panelists could kind of reflect on the vision that you have, if what change would you want to see in the world as young people gain access to more accurate information? Sort of what is your vision for a better future when young people are armed with this information to advocate for themselves? And I see Jane nodding. So Jane, I might put you on the spot and have you go first. What is your vision there?
I think that my vision is really to see a change where adolescents they know their rights. They can demand for their rights. They are not afraid to go to the health facility. They are not afraid to get information that will be helpful for them. And this will lead into lower unplanned pregnancies. We have lower rates of unplanned pregnancies, lower rates of abortion, because now they can access contraceptives when they need to. More access to services. For instance, if there is gender-based violence, they know they have a right to go to the police or to the legal services and really demand that, they can listen to them. And all these rights, they'll be able to exercise their rights, and therefore will not accept to get into an early marriage or a forced marriage when they do not want to get into it. They will not be forced to have sex if they want to abstain, for instance, to say no to sex. So they will be able to have tools, and they'll not be ashamed and feel intimidated and feel small just because their bodies are changing. They'll be happy in their bodies and feel proud that they are actually growing up and they are thriving. So all this, I'm really hoping that this book will open their eyes, open their minds, and they'll be able to be happy for who they are and demand for services when they need those services without feeling intimidated by the community, by family, by church, by health facility, by the school. No, we want to thrive. We want to complete our education. And if by using contraceptives, I'll complete my education, I need it and I have a right. I have to have it. If I've been raped, I know that I can get to a health facility and get an emergency contraceptive and get post-exposure prophylaxis without somebody judging me for having been raped or discriminating against me because I'm demanding for this service. So I'm really hoping that we shall have an enlightened adolescent who knows their rights and can demand for it and can thrive into adulthood and transition well into adulthood and have a healthy life. Yeah, that's how I look at it.
Great. Thriving adults who know their rights and can advocate for them. Beautifully said, Jane. Monalisa, let's hear your vision. How would you like to see the world change?
I think +1 to whatever Jane has told, like an empowered, enabled adolescent. But my vision would to have an empowered and enabled adolescent who have the supporting structure with him or her. Or so it's the parents who are able to give this information. The parents supporting them to seek their rights. The parent don't give misinformation or myths. The grandmothers or so I had got a lot of information from my paternal grandparents. So I wish that I get all when I was at that point of time, I get all the right information. I am not named and shamed. So in addition to them having all the rights, I want to see a system change where the community recognizes the right of these adolescents and they play a very, very active part so that this adolescent can exert their sexual and reproductive health rights. So I am seeing a community level change, a community level discussion, and in my family where it was totally no to speak about it, in just a matter of 5 years when I started working on this, my parents and my in-laws even now speak about menstruation as if it's a normal process. So I can see it happening in my family, and I see that could happen in anyone's family. And I feel so empowered and enabled now because the system, the structure around me has also enabled me so much. So I want to see that kind of changes in family, in communities, in spaces. So safe spaces, brave spaces where we can speak out The adolescent can speak out their mind, they can exert their rights. So this is my vision.
Great. Safe spaces and brave spaces. I love that, Monalisa. Thank you. Andre, I'd love to hear from you on this. What do you see in the future?
Yeah, if I can see myself today as an adolescent or teenagers, I want to see myself being are prepared, are informed, are aware of what change will happen to me, and how I adapt myself and I go through these changes, and what does it mean through to my body, my social decision making, and what I can make, energy can make through this age, how can impact my future. So nothing I need to see the adolescents have an open space with no discrimination, with no restrictions, with no kind of harassment said, where they can have a very accurate information of about the facts of the real context of SRH. And again, I need to see themselves being champion, being pioneers, being change makers, being readers of their own session of health, because they are the one who suffer when it comes worse. They are the one who benefit when it comes the right way to go. And again, I need to change, I say, community-based, social and culture-based system to connect this, to break this kind of intergeneration conflicts, where they say we as parents say, no, don't do it. We didn't do it currently. No, we need to understand the current exposures, the current drivers, positive and negative drivers, and empower a keep a teenager to go through quite different from what we have survived. So that's three. I need to see the SRH being always on a discussion table on each, as Jana said, we need to have a time for SRH, because whatever we become, whatever we want to become, it is because how we survived through the teenagers, adolescent, and young. So I need to see the world where adolescent teenagers, they are the readers of their own social health for their own benefit and their own future.
Yeah, I love that, Andre. Thank you for sharing that. I'm actually seeing some similar comments from Tijani. And Tijani, I wonder, would you be able to join us on camera? If do you see a button that says share video and audio? I'd love to hear more about what you're putting in the chat there. For those who can't see the chat, he's saying, I am looking forward to seeing adolescents' reliance on the formal health sector for reproductive health information reduced. For now, adolescents are afraid to go to healthcare providers because they'll be asked a lot of unnecessary questions, which are all discriminatory. So I'd love to hear from Dr. Tijani, if you'd be willing to turn on your camera and audio. Maybe you could share a little bit more about that. I know I'm putting you on the spot here, so if you're not able to do that, I understand. Let me type in the chat, see if he's able to do that. I see a question while we're waiting there. I see a question from Meti. I'm wondering what plans and hopes you have for disseminating the curriculum to communities who may not have internet access. Aha, very good question. Who would like to take that one? Monalisa, maybe, and then Jane?
Sure. So, Meti, exactly, we had the same concern when we were, designing and thinking about this curriculum. And we are like, this need to be in a form where it is easily printable and given it out like a handout to the community leaders. So there would be no reliance on internet for this. It could be, printed out, given by to them. So we are a banking open community based organization who can just download it and send it to a lot of community leaders so that, they can have it. And the good thing about this is, and this came out from our design team who had worked very closely with me, Sudeepa and Ruchika, is that it is all in one doc. I have seen many curriculum where they have content in one doc and then, the teacher's guide in one doc. This is all in one doc. So one doc, you print, it's module by module. You pick one module, you use this, you pick next module. You don't want to use this module for now, you can. So there is no reliance of one module on the next module. So these modules can be also used very independently. So no reliance on internet, independent modules. And this will be just as a big picture card you use, and you take it like a picture card. You want to laminate it, we have communities who have picture cards since 7 years, and they have been still using that card. So it's, once you print and laminate, it's good to go for a longer time.
Oh, that's a great tip. 7 years on one laminated card. That's impressive. Jane, what about you? I know this was on your mind as we worked on this as well. Anything you wanted to add there?
Yeah, I think if communities, somebody should be able to at least download it from the computer, be able to download it and get it printed, hard copies. So if we could have hard copies in those places where there are no computers, people are not able to access it over the phone, just downloading it and printing it, I think should be able to get it to communities where there is no internet access. But certainly there is the step of downloading it and printing it out, and maybe printing a number of copies so that people can actually use this curriculum wherever they are. Yeah.
Great. I think we might have lost Andre. I know his internet connection was a little unstable, so hopefully he can rejoin us, but we will be wrapping up momentarily. So I welcome the audience. If there are any other questions on your mind, we'd love to hear them. In terms of how we'll be sharing this, we will actually be sharing a link to the document with everybody who participated in this festival, and then we'll also have it available on our websites as well. Maybe some last thoughts from Jane and Monalisa. One thing we talked about is future modules or future iterations of this. In a perfect world, if we had all of the time and the funding, I wonder if there are things that you would like to see next. What are some of the iterations of this that you would like to see in the future? Monalisa, sure, go ahead.
Yeah. Jane, please go ahead. Jane has unmuted herself. I can join
Okay.
you.
Yeah, I think in the future, we need to really look at it. I was just thinking of a poster, just a one-pager, where we can be able to think about myths and misconceptions, so that we can actually, I already thought of how the heading would be Stop Rumors, Get the Facts. So that we say, this is the rumor, that when you have sex, then you can be able to skip menstruation for a long time. But the fact is that, yes, when you have sex, you'll get pregnant, and indeed you'll not have periods. But the pregnancy bit is not said. The girls are just told that if you have sex, then you'll not have periods for a long time. Or the cramps, will reduce because you'll not have periods. Yeah, they'll not have periods, but nobody tells them that you'll actually get pregnant. And that's the reason you'll not have. So if we could be able to bring out all the myths and misconceptions and misinformation, so that each time an adolescent is told something, they can easily check it out on this and say, is it really true? They have a place to check it out and get the correct information. So I'm really hoping that that could be the next step, and that the next step would also be that we train as many community leaders as possible, so that all of them have the information, we disseminate this information, but also disseminate the policies and the laws that support adolescents to live a healthy life. Because again, the laws are very good, but they are not disseminated. Can we get to a point where these are also disseminated to be able to support whatever we've put in this curriculum, and the adolescents can really enjoy a healthy life? Yeah.
Beautifully said, Jane. Thank you. Monalisa.
I think there could be a lot of things we can add, but if I have to pick 3 things in terms of topics, definitely the misconception, the myth and facts, and we have tried to put some in our safe sex module of the myth and facts, but also talking about consent, or also talking about sexual relationship. Those are the topics that could be added to the next topics, which we would like to add. Also about in what way there are programs available for them. So a little bit more on the country specific, if we could give, So it could be, one version, let's say for India, and one version Kenya, Rwanda. What kind of structures are already there where they can seek these services? Be a little bit more contextualized. That could be one more option, a further extension to that. Definitely in local languages. In all local languages, we can do it in Hindi. We have, in Swahili, Kirawanda, all, and Hindi is just one language. I'm sure there are many, many languages. We would love to do it in India. And the third point is who we are missing, like who is not represented. Sexual and reproductive health rights of disabled community, for LGBTQ. So these kind who are not, generally, because there is not enough material where they will see and say that, oh, this is for me. I am represented. My, somebody looking like me is represented in the picture. So who are not on the table, generally on most of the curriculum, they need to be there. So something on that part needs to be there in adolescent and sexual, reproductive, and health rights. So these three will be my next thing we should do.
Great. Well, I want to thank our panelists, Jane and Monalisa, and Andre as well. This is an amazing project that you've put together, and I think it is a launching point for what you've each described, which is ways that it really can grow and develop. We will wrap there. I do audio versions. That's a great idea, Meti. Monalisa, Jane, what do you guys think of audio versions?
So we have actually done one project where we have sent IVR calls, and it was so in a way that this become like a story-based audio version. You get a call at certain time. So it could be done in both ways. Either it could be through you get a call on certain time if you have access to, or it could be just played out in the community in a safe space. So both are doable, and I think a lot of communities have started doing it, and it's a great idea of having it in an audio version. Yeah.
Great idea. All right. Well, I want to thank you all for joining us for this conversation. And I thank our panelists, Jane and Andre and Monalisa, not only for their time today, but their time over the past few months in putting this together. We're excited to share this within the wider network and to bring more allies and co-collaborators along. This is a project that is really meant to be shared and to grow. So we welcome you all to be part of this and to join us in maybe creating some of these next projects that might help us expand access to great information. But thank you all for joining. Feel free to, as Monalisa says, give us some feedback. Tell us what tweaks that you think ought to be made. We encourage you to jump into the networking sessions if there's somebody that you want to continue a conversation with. If you have more that you want to go over with Monalisa or Jane, feel free to grab them in a networking session. And stay with us. We have more sessions later today that we will be continuing additional conversations around changing the funding landscape in sexual and reproductive health and rights. So if that's of interest to you, I encourage you to join us later today. We have a great lineup of speakers, and you can see all of those in reception. But thank you all for being here, and we look forward to continuing the conversation with you.